As she cleared the table and put away the cards, she noticed that the milk in the small pitcher she had brought out with her tea only minutes before had completely curdled and turned sour. She knew from the folk beliefs of her native land that this was something that only happened in the presence of pure evil, and she knew what Maxine was, but dared not speak the word. Welcome to the Night Visitors, where we share purportedly true accounts of encounters with vampires. I'm James, a paranormal researcher and lifelong vampire enthusiast, coming to you from Transylvania. Ania immigrated to the United States from Poland in the early 80s with her daughter after the death of her husband. She had been a renowned biologist in Warsaw, having worked in top-tier universities in Poland and elsewhere in the Eastern Bloc. But she secretly harbored a distrust and even a growing hatred for the oppressive communist regime. She managed to escape to the West and ultimately chose to settle in a rural farming community in western Massachusetts with a large Polish population. Initially, she was unable to find a university position, and by 1988, her daughter was away attending college, and Ania found herself alone operating a tailor shop out of her home that doubled as a fortune-telling parlor by night. At first, Ania was embarrassed to be earning her living reading tea leaves and cards, having been a woman of science and rationality. But she had learned the skill from her grandmother, who had been a practicing psychic and healer in her village in the Tatra Mountains, and deep down, Ania had always believed in the supernatural. One evening, she was sitting enjoying her tea and butter biscuits, a nightly ritual, when the door to the parlor opened and in stepped a skinny, almost skeletal woman who appeared to be in her late 40s or early 50s. Her hair was jet black and cut in the bob style popular in the 1920s, and she wore black stirrup pants and a top covered in purple and silver sequins. She stood there across the room from Ania with her arms crossed. For a few moments, the two women stood in silence staring at each other. Ania's large tuxedo cat, Victor, usually happy and constantly purring even with strangers, puffed himself up to twice his normal size, arched his back, and violently hissed at the woman that had invaded his space. He walked to Ania's side as if to protect her, emitting a sound that could only be described as a low growl. "I'm here to learn my fortune," the woman said flatly, and plopped down at the table. Ania took her seat across from the woman and thought to herself, "You'd be better off seeking my services as a dressmaker, as you're clearly a styleless fashion victim." But she held her tongue and feigned a smile, while Victor took his place under her chair and refused to budge. "What is your name, my dear?" Ania asked, shuffling the cards. "Maxine." The woman spit out the word like a piece of chewing gum. Ania shuffled the cards and laid out a spread in front of her client. The cards spoke of pure destruction and calamity. It was the darkest reading she had ever given. The woman sitting across from her had no hope and no future. Ania chose and sugar-coated her words carefully. What she really wanted to say was, "You're fucked. Get away from me before your misfortune rubs off on me." But she spoke of life obstacles and ended by saying that with patience and perseverance, everything can be overcome. Maxine snorted and grumbled to herself in Russian, saying, "Mёртвые приносят несчастье." The dead bring bad luck. Ania, having studied the language herself, understood and instinctively made the sign of the cross, causing Maxine to recoil and push herself back from the table with a look of disgust. Both women rose from the table and Maxine threw a $10 bill at Ania and said, "Now that we've met, I will be back." Then she turned and left. Ania rushed to the door to lock it. A mere 2 seconds had elapsed from the time Maxine had exited, nowhere near enough time for her to make it to the end of the driveway, yet she was nowhere in sight. Ania had had enough of the fortune-telling business and decided right at that moment to focus only on dressmaking and to work exclusively by light of day. Victor was still uneasy, rubbing against Ania and being much more clingy than usual. Ania knew never to doubt the instincts of a cat when it came to weird and dangerous people. As she cleared the table and put away the cards, she noticed that the milk in the small pitcher she had brought out with her tea only minutes before had completely curdled and turned sour. She knew from the folk beliefs of her native land that this was something that only happened in the presence of pure evil, and she knew what Maxine was, but dared not speak the word. Ania took down the sign advertising her psychic services and threw away all the fortune-telling decor and paraphernalia, and hoped Maxine would never darken her doorway again. She didn't get her wish. The following evening, just after sunset, Maxine knocked on the door and said sharply, "Let me in. I want to know my fortune." Ania yelled from her chair, "I no longer offer those services." She ran to the window and moved the curtain to one side, hoping to get a glimpse of Maxine walking away. But there was nobody there. Again, it had been too little time for her to leave the property. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Later that same night, Ania woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and on her way to the bathroom, she glanced out the window to see Maxine standing at the end of the driveway with the full moon shining overhead. She stood staring blankly at the house for a few seconds and then evaporated into a fine mist. Ania pressed her back to the wall and slid down to the floor. Burying her head in her hands, she whispered the word, "Vampire." Ania lay in bed sleepless until dawn, trying to recall all the bits of village lore her grandmother and the elderly women back home used to discuss about the undead. She would listen with interest as a young woman, but didn't truly believe in the existence of vampires, viewing such beliefs as superstitious and of another time. After what she witnessed in the driveway earlier that night, she was glad she had paid attention to the village gossip, if only out of a sense of curiosity for other people's colorful folklore. In the morning, she went to the local butcher shop and bought a jar of pig's blood. "I'm making kaszanka," she smiled and told the butcher, a plump Slovak man approaching the age of retirement. This was a lie, of course. She was not making the famous Polish blood sausage. She had another use for the blood. When she arrived home, she set about making a loaf of bread from scratch, mixing and kneading the dough, then allowing it to rise in a square metal mold. She baked the bread, and the final product was a perfectly fluffy loaf with a crunchy golden crust. As she waited for the bread to cool, she sat looking out the window watching the sun move through the sky ever closer to sunset. By the time the bread had fully cooled, it was the golden hour, and soft amber light bathed the land outside her house. Ania cut into the loaf and filled it with garlic and ashes from twigs that she had collected and burned in her backyard. Then she spooned the coagulated pig's blood into the bread, the result of which was a soggy, sloppy mess. Then she placed the bloody bread on her front doorstep and went to bed feeling more stupid than she ever had in her life. a doctor in biology placing blood-soaked bread outside her house to ward off a vampire. Is this what her life had become? By this point, she had been awake for more than 24 hours, and she fell asleep immediately and rested peacefully until dawn. In the morning light, Ania could see that the bread was half-eaten. She laughed at herself and what she had done in a moment of irrational panic. She figured an animal must have come by and eaten it. But as she bent over to take in the plate, she noticed that on the ground where she had placed the bread, there were several purple and silver sequins that could only have come from Maxine's awful sweater. As a further precaution, Ania planted rose bushes in front of her home and traced crosses over all the doors and windows with chalk from her church that had been blessed on the Feast of the Epiphany. The bloody bread and other defenses must have worked, because Ania never saw Maxine again. Ania realized that she wasn't being true to herself and she needed to get out into the world. She managed to get a job teaching at a local community college and then at a university, where she continued to teach biology until her retirement 2 decades later. Despite living in a world of science, hard facts, and empirical evidence, Ania never doubted that for a brief moment, she had come into contact with the supernatural. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's episode. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the Night Visitors channel for new videos each Friday. Thank you for listening. You can find the Night Visitors on your favorite podcast platform as well as YouTube, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter where you will receive each week's episode directly in your inbox, as well as articles on vampire lore and vampires in popular culture. A special thanks to composer Tim Kulig for our intro music, Haunted House. For more information, please visit our website at thenightvisitorsvrs.com.